If you don't know who we are, we're the Church of Korihor, a spiritual community for godless people. No, seriously. This is the first of the sermons that I am preparing for a new audiobook called All My Prophets Paint. In the future, more sermons will be released for our contributors at korihor.org. If you don't know about korihor.org, luckily there's a website for that. It's korihor.org. Check it out. And now, a Tronie in Turkish style. Never steal someone's Dutch girlfriend.
Like Korihor, I was lost and alone. Like Korihor, cast far from home. Like Korihor, they stole my voice. Like Korihor, left without a choice. But unlike Korihor, I can speak again. Unlike Korihor, I have a friend. In my darkest hour, my hope was renewed. Because unlike Korihor, I had you. Like Korihor, no guardian angels flew. Like Korihor, shamed by those I never knew. At no God's command, my own footprints remain in this sand. But unlike Korihor, I can speak again. Unlike Korihor, I have a friend. In my darkest hour, my hope was renewed. Because unlike Korihor, I had you. Like Korihor, you helped me to see. Like Korihor, you lit the path for me. Because of you, I'm not without a home. Because of you, I'll never walk alone.
Never steal someone's Dutch girlfriend. I mean you. In spring of 2023, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam exhibited 28 paintings of the artist Johannes Vermeer under one vaulted ceiling for the first time in centuries. That shouldn't be a controversy, but it soon became one. The exhibit included works on loan from the Mauritius Gallery at The Hague, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. The show was a doorbuster, shattering attendance records and reigniting global fascination with an artist whose output comprised only 36 known paintings. Meanwhile, there was a hole in the Mauritius Gallery at The Hague, where Vermeer's most famous work usually hangs. In fact, The missing canvas is one of the most famous paintings in the world. A painting of a girl, so beautiful and captivating that she is called by some the Mona Lisa of the North. She is Girl with a Pearl Earring. Unlike most paintings of Jan Vermeer, the teenage subject of Girl with a Pearl Earring looks candidly back at you as you are looking at her. Like Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, she appears joyful without an obvious smile, her hair wrapped whimsically in a silky yellow fabric with a blue satin trim. She is in profile and turning almost over her shoulder, as if she has been caught playing dress up in her mother's finery. The crowning jewel of the image is a jewel. Well, sort of. A silvery pearlescent orb hung from her left earlobe without any visible attachment to the ear. Girl is enchanting in a way that few pieces are. A timeless snapshot of a mysterious youth who is not yet a woman, but tired of being treated like a child. However old the painting is, the feeling in the painting resurrects her to vivacious life in every age. The Mauritius chose to hang controversy in her place while she was on loan in Amsterdam. They issued a contest called My Girl with a Pearl, an open call to anyone, anywhere, to reimagine the painting in any medium, and the winners of the contest would be displayed in the girl's place at the gallery for the few days that she was in Amsterdam. The response was staggering. Over 2,700 submissions poured in from the young and the old, seasoned artists and weekend hobbyists alike, each offering a fresh lens on a work that has captivated hearts for over 3 centuries. The curators selected 60 pieces to hang in Girl's place, including 5 distinguished winners. But one of these winners lit the art world on fire. A Girl with Glowing Earrings was a painting conjured in Midjourney, the artificial intelligence program. Created by digital artist Julian Van Deeken, this Girl with Glowing Earrings replaced Vermeer's soft brushstrokes with pixel-sharp contrast and a surreal glow surrounding 2 earrings as the subject faces more directly toward the viewer. Some visitors embraced it as a new lens for an ancient craft. Just as Vermeer drew on the techniques and materials of his day, today's artists paint with AI, just like any other canvas, a human hand with a mechanical brush. Critics saw the AI-made portrait as a symbol of erasure, reducing the human craft to cold and heartless algorithm. The Mauritius embraced the debate. Posters adjacent to the display asked, "What is art if not the mark that we leave on the world? Does the creative spark reside in the hand or the mind? Can an algorithm ever dream?" For lovers of this Dutch girl, Vermeer's image is not just a painting. It's a relationship. The girl is never dead. She lives and evolves with every pair of eyes that look at her. But our immortal girl never would have existed without a mortal girl who sat in Vermeer's studio over 300 years ago. Right? In an auction room at The Hague in 1881, amateur collector Arnoldus André de Tombe paid 2 guilders and 30 cents. That's about $30 US today. For a small head and shoulders study of a girl in Turkish dress. It wasn't called Girl with a Pearl Earring then. It was described as a Tronie, a study of an imaginary figure drawn more or less like a portrait. Could it possibly be that all of the people in history who have had this relationship with this girl are in love with not an actual girl, but with a fantasy in Vermeer's own mind that was found in a 19th century garage sale? Surely not. Girl is Vermeer's masterpiece. She must be a portrait of a real person, not a Tronie. There is a famous novel named after the painting that fictionalized an affair between Vermeer and a girl in his household staff named Greet. It was made into a very popular 2003 film starring a 17-year-old Scarlett Johansson in the title role and 42-year-old Colin Firth as Vermeer. But the author, Tracy Chevalier, is quick to point out that the story is fiction. Greet doesn't exist in history. She is an invention, a projection of the story that forms in Chevalier's own mind when she looks at the painting. In that way, Greet is as much a creation of screenwriter Olivia Hettried, a creation of director Peter Weber, and certainly a creation of young Scarlett Johansson. Who is the girl's creator? Whose girl is Greet? If the first girl was a vision inside of Vermeer, then how is Chevalier's Greet any less the original girl than Vermeer's, or mine, or yours? Are there as many girls as there are people to look at her? In fact, as soon as Girl went from auction to exhibit, there were immediate accusations that she was not even Vermeer's. She was a forgery. Vermeer had a mark, a signature, that evolved over time but was always placed so that the world would know that it was his. This mark was a capital letter M with a capital I placed in the valley of the M. Then the rest of Mir spelled out next to the prominent mark. When the painting went on exhibit, it was natural that critics wanted to know how a lost Vermeer could have been found and at such a low price without anyone noticing. The answer was supposedly that Vermeer's signature in the upper left-hand corner had been painted in a transparent color that was not light fast. It had faded over time. Détrompe had a colleague who claimed to notice the shadow around the faded signature that is just barely noticeable if you look very closely. The two men conspired to not bid against each other at the auction so that they could get the painting at a much cheaper price and then exhibit it as a long-lost Vermeer worth a lot more. But the explanation just doesn't hold water. Vermeer using a transparent color to make his mark is a rookie mistake that Vermeer would not have made at that stage of his career. In fact, chemical analysis of the paint shows that the background color in Girl was originally green, not black like it is now, but once again painted by mixing a transparent color to make it green. These are the mistakes of an amateur still learning how to paint. To this day, there is some suspicion that Girl with a Pearl Earring is a fake, or at least that it is not a Vermeer. Well, we'll have to come back to that story. Détrompe had no heirs, so when he died, he bequeathed the canvas to the Mauritius in 1902, ensuring that the girl stayed in the Netherlands. But with her stayed the mystery. Did he dress up a garage sale fake as a Vermeer? Or is the girl the genuine article? The game is afoot, but we'll have to come back to that in the next sermon. I want to fast forward about 70 years to another painter, my favorite painter, and the one who inspired me in 2023 to finally pick up the brush. In Poland, they say Beksinski is kitsch. That hurts my feelings, but they don't care. If Poles treat the work of their surrealist, Zdzislaw Beksinski, as just gloomy Gothic imitations of heavy metal albums, they could be excused. But it's actually the other way around. Born in Sanok, Poland in 1929, Beksinski was 40 years old when Ozzy Osbourne and company released Black Sabbath, arguably the first heavy metal album ever, in 1970. By then, he was already a celebrated photographer and painter. It wasn't until after the artist's death that the first Beksinski paintings were licensed for heavy metal albums. Seeing as Beksinski was murdered in 2005, That's fairly late for heavy metal to have inspired his work. No, it was definitely the other way around. Beksinski almost never painted without listening to music, but while he liked pop music, he listened to classical music while he painted. His son Tomasz, or Tomuk as they called him, would raid his father's pop music collection so often that Zdzislaw just gave it to him. Tomasz became a popular music journalist in Poland and learned English so that he could keep up with the news on the Western music beat. Rock music was hard to come by in Poland during the Warsaw Pact. Even as the Cold War had slowly thawed, rock albums from England and America were precious commodities. If one had connections in the West, they could be used to trade in Western music like currency, something that the Beksinskis often did. Underground dubbing of Western music on cassette tapes became a great way to make friends and even to pay bills. Beksinski used to trade rock albums along with paintings to pay his doctor's bills, for example. Beksinski inspired heavy metal, and not the other way around. And not just the albums, but the music as well. And you think about that for a minute. When was the last time that a painting made you hear music? Take a good look at a Beksinski, and you will experience it. Devotees of Beksinski's art are included among album cover designers for heavy metal. They include British artist Alex C.F., who has made album covers for Fall of Ifrafa, Lightbearer, and Archivist. Possibly the nearest creative heir to Beksinski's legacy is Mariusz Lewandowski, the creator of cover art for bands like Bell Witch and Psychroptic. He has said, "My professors were Rembrandt, Master of Light, and Zdzislaw Beksinski, who made me realize that there are no boundaries in art." In his own time, Beksinski was known as the Painter of Nightmares, a moniker that he absolutely hated. Beksinski frequently told critics and journalists that if their nightmares resembled his paintings, they should see a psychoanalyst. He himself sought out therapy, but that was mostly about his relationship with his son Tomuk, which we'll have to get back to. There is so much more to Beksinski than just a fad obsession with the macabre. He grew up under Nazi occupation. His first 40 years of adulthood were mired by the austerity of Poland's communist regime. Add to these hardships his own childhood trauma, his growing struggle with obsessive-compulsive disorder, and a deepening crisis of faith that culminated in atheism and nihilism. All of this added up to an artist with a lot to say, but only paint to say it with. Beksinski famously never titled his paintings, at least not with real titles, because he didn't want to contaminate the viewer's perspective with his words. Occasionally, however, we get a rare glimpse into his mind on one of his paintings. For example, Beksinski's AA-72 is a biblical painting. The 72 means that it was painted in 1972. An oil on hardboard, AA-72 depicts a gorge with walls made of cloaked phantom giants looming over a solitary path. At the bottom of the painting, a lone figure walks on the path with a torch. The art historian at the museum in Sanok, where this painting resides, is Beksinski's personal friend, Zdzislaw Beksinski. He says that this painting had to do with a passage that stuck in the artist's mind from the 23rd Psalm. Quote, Zdzislaw said that this psalm passage made a gigantic impression on him as a child, and it has continued to do so to this day. He says that for years he tried to make sense of these words about the dark valley through music, and translated, among other things, from psalms in Czech to a piece by Anton Dvorak, from other languages he didn't know, in order to explain something more about this dark valley. He cites other translations according to which it is the valley of death. It seems to me that, As in the case of Kafka, here is a similar situation. He stops at the penetration of this dark valley. He does not have the courage to take a step further. He doesn't go those 2 verses further, where this psalm becomes very optimistic. You will pass through this dark valley. Evil you will not fear, for I am with you, God says to this man. Beksinski's OCD was extremely problematic for him. To fixate on this valley of the shadow of death, rather than read on to the positive and worshipful verses in the same psalm, I think it shows how his illness caused him to slip into neurosis that he could only escape by painting. In a television interview, a journalist asked him, "What does Beksinski fear?" And he answered, "Death." He said that all fears were just subordinate to death. But I look at AA 72 and I see something else. The central question raised by these paintings is a spiritual one. As an atheist, I'm not supposed to weigh in on spiritual things. Also, as an atheist, I'm definitely going to. What the hell does My Girl with a Pearl or AA 72 or Girl with a Pearl Earring have to do with God? The answer to that is particularly important to me as an atheist and as an artist. If we consider every human being as no more than the sum of their parts, then Vermeer was effectively a computer. Why should a silicon-generated girl with a pearl be considered any less creative than a girl with a pearl earring made by a computer of fats, proteins, sugars, and salts like Vermeer's? The answer can be found, of course, in Star Trek. In Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, there is a phenomenon known as transporter phobia. When a person steps onto the pad of a transporter to get beamed down, they are effectively committing suicide. The person on the pad gets disassembled and reassembled somewhere else. Then they repeat the process when they are beamed up. If we are each only the sum of our parts, then the person who stepped into the transporter room is dead. Their reassembled doppelganger on the away team at some other place is also dead once they are mercifully destroyed on the surface, and their clone is reassembled back in the transporter room and returns to be debriefed. The crew of the Enterprise are mostly experienced beamers who have accepted that they are each still the same person who walked into the transporter room. When they return and report with the memories of their cloned originals, they are convinced that they are essentially the same being. A person is a story that knows that it is a story and wants to know what happens next. That gives the crew of the Enterprise the confidence to step onto the transporter pad and say, "Energize." You know, you are not the being that was formed in your mother's womb either. The cells of your body are constantly replacing themselves. So you are slowly being beamed anyway, but through time rather than space, which are almost certainly the same thing. So if you are more than the sum of your parts, but there is no God in heaven whose child you are, then what the hell are you? You are a story that knows that it is a story and wants to know what happens next. When I was a boy, my maternal grandfather used to drill into me memorized passages of scripture. We were devout Mormons, but my grandfather had grown up Catholic. So while he loved to have me recite passages from Joseph Smith, his favorite was that same psalm that haunted Beksinski. Let's try. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When I would recite this psalm to my grandfather, it brought tears to his eyes. From the time that he was my age now, my grandpa struggled with Parkinson's disease. It made him absolutely miserable. When he was younger, he joined the Mormon church after my nana told him that he had to quit drinking or find somewhere else to live because she was having another baby and she wouldn't watch him beat another child in an angry, drunken stupor. He had to find God and a reason to become a better man. The 23rd Psalm was a lasting reminder from his childhood as a Catholic boy that endured into his old age as a Mormon. A prophecy that if he gave his trust to God, then blessings would pour out over him in eternal life, if not in this fleeting life. I'm glad that he had that until the day he died. That God died for me more than 20 years ago, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him. He needed God, but I need more. I don't see a man frozen in fear in AA 72. I see a confident man lifting his torch high and forging ahead. Now, Mr. Bonnock knew Beksinski better than I will ever know him, except that I have his paintings and the assurance from the painter himself that he wanted me to see the vision of his paintings with my own internal world. So here it goes. I believe that Beksinski wanted to believe that there was a way to walk calmly in the face of death. There was a torch that he could raise in defiance of death. That torch some will call meaning, some call it a calling, some call it a soul. Nonsense. You are memories and personality being beamed up to a life that makes you curious and ambitious and hopeful. Or you are a tragedy being beamed down into despair and misery. You are a story that knows that it is a story and is writing its next chapter to find out how it ends. Because if you stop, you die. While your heart beats and your lungs breathe and your synapses fire, you die the day you give up on your story. The girl with a pearl earring may be a Tronie, an imaginary character in the mind of Vermeer, but what difference does it make? She is an imaginary girl in your mind, no matter whether she was ever a person. So you shouldn't give a shit. But you do, don't you? If this whimsical girl, no longer a child, but not yet a woman, can stop and play dress up because she has a rich future to look forward to, then maybe your own valley of the shadow of death is a little more bearable. But in the humdrum of a busy life with bills to pay and appointments to keep and choices to make, we often forget our story in the process of being its subject. Our hero loses their way, and we stop writing our own story and let the circumstances write it for us. To find the torch that is your story, one that will not save you from death, but make the intervening days of punishment and difficulty more worthwhile, I suggest that you imagine that sitting next to you right now is your purpose in life. Not given to you by anyone else, but born within you. Now, between you and that purpose, imagine a barrier that is opaque. However stressed and disheartened you feel, it becomes harder to see through. Now, ask yourself, what is that barrier right now? Because I'm willing to bet that if you know the answer to that question, then you will know what's on the other side of that barrier. That's your torch. In the moment when you find yourself in the valley of the shadow of death, raise your torch up high and forge ahead. If you cannot stumble ahead, then raise your torch and walk. If you cannot walk, then raise up your torch and fucking run. This is the wisdom I glean from paint. Scriptures are fine, but none of them speak to me like Vincent or Rembrandt or Beksinski. These painters take a piece of their story, a piece of the beauty that makes life worth being curious about, and immortalize it in paint so that it can ignite that story inside of us long after they are gone. That's why a painting is more than an image. It's a prophecy. Old sayings from old books are fine. But as for me, all my prophets paint. Amen.
All my prophets paint scripture of joy and pain. Though they are gone, their brushstrokes remain. Oh, my seer sees in a starry night a steeple that isn't true, a pillar of godless light. Though I cannot say that this world was made, my world's not in vain, because my prophets paint. Though I'll never be anybody's saint, I walk by more than faith, 'cause all my prophets paint. My priestess knew love, betrayal and sin. She's gone to her grave, but on canvas she lives. My oracle testifies in a killer's blue, oppression and grief, then he was murdered too. Though I cannot say that this world was made, my world's not in vain, because my prophets paint. Though I'll never be anybody's saint, I walk by more than faith, 'cause all my prophets paint.
SpectrumGallery.org is a mission of our Godless Church, the Church of Korihor. Every dollar that you spend or donate at SpectrumGallery.org goes to helping a child whose family can't afford autism therapy treatments so that they can get the treatments that they need. Atheism has no values, but atheists do. I want to ask you to join us. But if you like art and you care about kids with autism, I personally would be very grateful for your help. Thank you.